either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
You open the app and press play, dear listeners. You asked for it, so we came with such sights to show you again. The Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris. We don't actually have anything to show you because this is a podcast.
Yes, technically. I mean, we have social media that you can check out and see our other stuff.
That's true.
But if you haven't guessed it, we are returning to the world of Hellraiser with Hellbound Hellraiser 2.
Heck yeah.
Even though it should have been Hellraiser 2 Hellbound, but...
No, they chose to name it this way. I don't know why, but they did. This is the way they decided the franchise would go.
Because branding sequels is hard.
It's not, though.
I mean, how many Friday the 13th, the actual final... No, this is really the final part 7 we have.
If there was one titled Friday the 13th, no really, this is the end, I would own it immediately.
That's like all the Sharknado movies is how that is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And granted, this is only the second Hellraiser, and eventually we do get into the naming problems real bad, but for the first 4, I would argue that naming it silly like this doesn't really affect you finding the second one.
Yeah, especially with, like, because this one actually has 2 in it. Some of them when it's like Hellraiser Inferno, it's like, how am I supposed to, like, granted, I know they're all mostly standalone, but if I'm trying to watch them in order, how am I supposed to know that that's the order?
That's true, because we got to watch this on your beautiful Arrow Collection DVD set, so it only has the first 4, which did lead my husband to believe there was only 4, as he'd only ever seen the first one, so I put this one in, he's like, I thought you guys already did this movie, and I was like, actually, we're just doing the second one.
Well, third one.
Wait, we'll also be coming to the third one. And he goes, "There's a third one." I go, "There's actually 4."
There's like 7 of them, Brian. There's more than that now.
No, I believe there's 11. And
yeah.
I don't think I'm counting the TV show there, but I could accidentally be counting the TV show. Not sure.
Yeah, no, there's so many of them now.
He wasn't sure what the topic of the later ones was about, and I didn't know how to answer that.
Yeah, they're not important to this one.
That's what I told him too.
But Hellbound Hellraiser 2 is written by Peter Atkins, based on the story by Clive Barker, and directed by Tom Randell, starring Ashley Lawrence, who returns as Kirsty, Claire Higgins, who returns as Julia, and the amazing Doug Bradley, who returns as, now listed as, Pinhead.
Huzzah! Welcome back, Doug Bradley.
Yep. And before we really get into it, our sources for today's episode include commentary by director Tom Radley, writer Peter Atkins, actress Ashley Lawrence, and film critic Stephen Jones and Kim Newman, as well as various featurettes and commentaries included on the amazing Arrow Hellish Quartet set.
Absolutely. Along with the making of documentary Leviathan Hellraiser, the story of Hellraiser and Hellbound.
Yes, that is one of the other featurettes in it too.
I found it specifically.
Yes. But Hellraiser 2 is kind of an interesting one because it's like every time we talk about these movies that have, like, these sequels, it's always either one of 2 cases, either, like, Aliens, where it took forever for them to get to a sequel.
Absolutely.
Or it's like this, where it was like, oh, first one was so good, we're greenlighting it right away, let's go.
I don't even think they fully finished the first one before talks of the second one. And when I say talks, I mean, like, hey, what's our idea? Who's coming back? Hey, I see you're still on set, real quick, can I ask you what your thoughts and feelings about starring in the next one are?
Yeah, even had like a whole one of the critics, or who was it? One of the featurettes had a guy who had been like with them from the get-go. I think it was Stephen Jones, where he had like he had worked on documenting the making of Hellraiser,
yes,
and then Hellraiser 2 as well as I think the third one.
I think you're right, and I find it very interesting because normally my complaint, especially with a horror franchise sequel and then usually third and fourth one, is that there is either too much time between the first one and the second one, and the second one doesn't recap well enough for me to actually remember what happened. Or it's like this one, which this movie's barely a year apart from the first one, and we recap so hard that I thought that maybe I'd pushed the wrong DVD option.
I do want to ask you about that a little bit, just because, like, that is one thing that I've got. Like, I don't know if that was 100% necessary, like, from my point of view. Like, I get where they're going for that, but we see that in quite a few other movies around this era where they recap pretty much everything of the sequel to, like, get you caught up. And it's like, what's really the point of that other than, like, if it's been, like, years in between, cool, but it's like, we'll go back to looking at Aliens and how it was set up to feel like it was almost time, or like no time had passed between.
No, absolutely. From a story continuity standpoint, I don't think it really helps.
No.
However, with that said, don't get me wrong, I like Hellraiser series, I like the world, I find it interesting. I cannot call myself a Hellraiser fan. Because I do not watch these movies every Halloween or every time we put in a spooky movie. I have not bothered to read all of the books. I barely read one of the books.
Novella, not even a full novel.
Correct. There's a lot in the Hellraiser fan world to enjoy and immerse yourself in, even after all these years, and I have not done that, so I don't qualify myself as a Hellraiser fan. So I, as a non-Hellraiser fan who is jumping back to Hellraiser 2, barely kind of remembering Hellraiser 1, I did like that we reintroduced everything, that we refreshed my mind on who was playing what, because it is a little confusing with the whole body swapping, skin wearing nonsense. It is nice to refresh ourselves just real briefly on what the supernatural powers we're dealing with here are, because it's a little, like, the imagery is big and bold and gory, and so it's a little easy to forget the rules of the world.
Yeah, and from something more mainstream in 88, I can see where you're getting with that, where it's, okay, well, we're gonna kind of lightly reshock you into this all.
Now, saying that as just like a loose fan, I can see how a hardcore fan would not enjoy this. It is almost a full rehash of the first one, leaving out what most fans consider their favorite props or Cenobites. So I see why they don't like it. However, now that I have listened to countless hours of making of commentaries and behind the scenes featurettes and read several books written by people who are deep in the Hellraiser world and lore and loving collection, I think what actually happened was less of a, hey, for the fans we should recap, and more of a, I want to talk about it again.
Yeah, I can kind of see that a little bit, but one thing that I think was really interesting right away is that Barker was not the writer.
I did think that was interesting.
And that this was also the first screenplay by Atkins, as well as the directorial debut of Randall.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they're all kind of connected because Atkins actually started his career in theater with Barker and Doug Bradley.
Yes, they talk about their time in theater together numerous times. Countless hours of being told about their previous play.
Oh man, that was a good chunk of the commentary. It was borderline just old people rambling about, like, we've talked about this many times where it's so long between between movie release and the commentary that it's ends up being rambling of like, oh, I saw their child.
Yes. However, there is a nice, at least on the Arrow collection, a nice range of time that they have compiled interviews and commentaries from all of the makings and time periods of people coming back to talk about this movie. So there is some commentary that's, I mean, it's a little after the movie came out. It's not right then and there.
2003, I think, is like the earliest.
Not too bad. I mean, still a little, but like it gets later and later and later. They still constantly are talking about their time in college with this play every single time they get a chance. So at this point, I feel like I have seen the majority of this play via photos and stills that they've released, despite it not having been something I can get a hold of.
Yeah, the play she's talking about specifically is there's kind of, it's not fully a precursor to Hellraiser, but you can see the inklings of the Cenobites in their early works from this play.
And it is where a lot of fans are pulling references when they say Hellraiser references Christian ideology, or it talks strongly about desire and your connection with pain and pleasure. That doesn't just come from the movie. Most of them are counting this previous play and the previous writings and poetry as canon, despite the fact that it's not.
And the other thing that I find interesting is, like, while we say Barker didn't write this, he was heavily there for production and helped flush out a lot of the backstories, and it's still within his world, and they used him as that resource. But he was also pleased with where they went because it allowed the story to go outside of where Barker thought it could go.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing that I think is really important to remember is that while Clive Barker definitely created and is the founding father of Hellraiser series, Doug Bradley became Pinhead so fully, and by the second movie had really claimed the role.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of times where they talk about how even directors and writers for the different series, for his entire time playing Pinhead, because I think it's 8 films that he stars as Pinhead or something like that.
Yeah, a vast majority of the franchise before they moved to, I think people refer to him as Chubby Pinhead.
Yeah.
And then the female Pinhead.
Yeah. And so by the second one, he really talks about how this character is kind of his own. He really helped shape the franchise, and especially the second movie. Granted, not involved directly in the writing, but his opinions were taken very seriously.
Mm-hmm. Which we'll see a deviation from that after this one.
Yes, we will.
But before we dive into Hellbound Hellraiser 2, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Well, there's not really a spot-on blood drink that we can just sip upon.
They drink wine in the movie.
They do drink wine in the movie, and so you have found us a lovely red wine that did have a very spooky mask on the cover.
And it was named Marquis. Specifically, it went to my mind, Marquis de Sade, the father or the grandfather of sadomasochism.
Fantastic. Close enough.
Cheers.
That's a dry wine.
Very dry.
Oh no. It's okay. I'll get through it. I will endure.
You'll have such tasteful suffering, Chris.
See, here's one of the very contradicting things, is the color of this wine is spot on. It's a beautiful dark red, and yet the movie is so wet.
Yes.
This movie is so drippy. So mushy.
It is. And that's the thing, too. We talk about with this opening scene with, the recap, and, it gets right into the gore. But when we get introduced to, or the origin of Pinhead, basically, it's this kind of repeat of the first one. Kind of this light intro where last time it was Frank playing with the box. Now it's this new character. Or new-ish character. New human side of the character.
Yes.
But it's in some exotic corner of the world solving the box of... And this time we're in India, which, honestly, that's kind of one thing that I find interesting about this era of films, and films in general, is, when it's made in, Europe or the U.S., that's one of the things is, we have to make it exotic by setting it in Central Europe.
Or Egypt.
Yes, somewhere outside of Europe and America. Yeah, Egypt or the far reaches of the Amazon or the Far East. And that's one thing I do want to see someday, is just some Indian dude or some, Chinese guy finding some ancient artifact in, France or some shit like that.
I would 100% love that. So this one is the last in the series to be ambiguously European, ambiguously UK set.
No, it's set in the U.S. They're both set in the U.S. They were filmed over in the U.K., and that's what caused some confusion, which I don't get, because the way the first one's shot, I wouldn't have thought it was England. It's okay, this feels like an older U.S. town.
Having now listened to, especially the British cast, talk about their thoughts on where this was located, their idea of the U.S. does tickle my fancy a little bit. It's vague.
Oh, yeah.
At best. And so I see why they claim that, we wrote it for UK, and then they asked us if we could adjust it, and they got us an English guy or an American guy to, kind of round out the British sound, and I was like, I did not notice, nor did I care. But thank you for including me in your horror world. I appreciate it, I guess. Yeah. But this is something that especially 80s British movies and TV fall prey to all the time, and that is the oldie times of the Britons, where they must go to be, mythical, is always somewhere that was, previously conquered.
Yeah.
And thus, this movie starts off feeling just a little bit too much like a British BBC drama.
Yeah.
Kind of waiting for, Poirot or Miss Marple to come out and solve the murder box cube.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's one thing that I find interesting, especially with talking with some of our UK people that we know. Shout out to Ghost Hacks Gaming and my constantly sending him Scottish shit. But I find it fascinating how culturally we think we're so similar, but we are drastically different in many regards. And especially when it comes to the architecture and the settings.
Yes.
And I think it plays into kind of our this thought of like the East Coast and the old town East Coast that feels more European and kind of that eldritch H.P. Lovecraft style setting and horror. So I think maybe that's where I'm coming from, of like, okay, I 100% thought this was set in America from the get-go.
I can see it. I can definitely see that.
But also, I think the way they set up Pinhead is there's a lot of, in rewatching these movies, there's a lot of, at least the first two, they set up where the room has many paths, kind of not, I want to say it almost feels a little bit maze-like, where he's at the kind of the center of this maze and he has so many other options he could take out of there.
Almost labyrinth-esque.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he's so focused, and the exits are easy, but he's so focused on this desire that he's oblivious to them until they start closing off around him, and even with the skylight above him in a cube shape, just a lot of this playing off of this just maze, like almost like he's within the cube itself at somewhere.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it is a good shock back to everything. I mean, I complain a little bit about that intro of flashbacks and repeats.
It is a lot, but with that said, especially now having talked, I have a few friends who are hardcore Hellraiser fans. Read everything, watched everything, constantly wanting me to rewatch everything. I now appreciate, though, this like flashback mode just a little bit more, because they notice differences in the Cenobites and the story that I did not care to notice the first time. Details that to them felt important, like eyeballs being present, or characters being focused on more than the original movie gave true time for. And they're like, oh, see, that's how you know this was originally a romance story. I'm like, okay, whatever you say, home dog. But, but like, so like, I feel like it does have a purpose. It's a lot.
It's a good way to wrap up and bring together the trauma that before getting right into Kirsty, which I think that's an interesting way to bring up the trauma and the aftermath is the first movie's ordeal. Just like, okay, well, we've been in her mind for like the beginning 5 seconds of this movie, basically.
I do also love that this sets up a really cool, like, new home base. Because obviously we can't be back at the original house. We have to have somewhere new. Insane Asylum Ward, fantastic location.
Yeah, it serves as a way to catch us up in between what happened between the first movie and this movie, setting the sealed mattress, and changing of artifacts of the gateway, where, like, from the petrified body and the floorboards of the house, it's something movable, something that's able to get around. Kind of like a different, not even like the puzzle box, but it's an interesting way of transforming from a haunted house to now technically a haunted mattress.
I agree, because the rules of the Hellraiser universe are not really hard and fast, but they are fairly consistent inside their own movie. Yeah. Maybe not movie to movie, but I appreciate that at least in this one, it kind of sort of gives you the idea of where they might have been thinking of, you can see the continuity.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
it's never a hard and fast rule. Everything is soft horror magic in Hellraiser, but it at least feels in the same world. It never feels like we're reinventing it.
At least these first, I'd say 3.
Yeah, 4 is kind of a meh. It's close, and then we lose the plot entirely after that.
Oh, yeah, and then Hellworld, where it's not even a Hellraiser movie, it's just attached to it to
it's just for
sell
funsies.
More. Yeah, they show up at the last 5 seconds of the movie.
Yeah, the first 4, I would argue, are the true core mythos.
Yeah.
And then we kind of lose the plot, but that's fine.
But it's not for talked at this point, but there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes in this movie that I find it interesting of them having to fix stuff and kind of change it as they go. My first question for this all, the boyfriend from the first movie.
Yes.
Like, I know he was a big part in the first one, but he wasn't very useful.
But I didn't care about him, like, at all, because we had other stuff happening.
Yeah, but his fortitude to go through all of this, and they're like, oh yeah, we talked to your boyfriend. We let him go.
I'm not gonna lie, I forgot he was in this movie.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is, like, he's such a nothing part of, like, it makes him feel like nothing part of the first movie. Skip past him, and it's like, okay, he's done. I'm guessing probably some filming, and he couldn't come back for it. But they never discuss, like, why exactly they left the boyfriend completely out of this. And I know it's supposed to be Kirsty's story, but it's just, it's kind of a funny detail that, like...
And also, they do such a good job of trying to be, like, thoughtful in the set design and, like, where actors and where you can see different aspects of these horror elements. Because a big part of is it real is, like, especially we're now in the psych ward, that idea of like, well, how much of this is real and how much of this is another dimension, or can other people deal with this?
Mm-hmm.
He's just like in the corner of the room, and we should see him in like half of these sweeping shots, and they just like are like, no, he's like behind the curtain. Don't worry about the boyfriend. Don't worry about him.
Shoot, he's gone. We're moving on with the story, because he's only one line in this movie, or two lines in this movie, basically.
What is he doing here other than to show the camera around?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, he's just in the flashbacks. That's all he's there for.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do like that immediately we're already setting up who the antagonist is going to be with the new doctor, and kind of setting up this new hell.
And he's such a good new spook.
Oh, yeah. Well, and like, the way they set up his desire of like searching the puzzle of the brain, going further for the ultimate solution.
Yes. I like that this now expands on the base of desire that we set up in that first movie, where the evil stepmother, essentially, is the base of desire, where it's more lust-driven. His is similar, but at the root of it is knowledge. It is curiosity.
It's a lust for knowledge. It's a different type of lust.
And granted, like all Hellraiser movies, and just like the base concept of Cenobites is there's always a weird perversion to the creatures and to the hell version of itself. But I like that they branched out more, because the people who make this spend so much time in the documentaries and their interviews talking about this, like, oh no, it's not just sexual, it's like the need for desire, it's the need for power, it's these big emotions. And it wasn't, I think, until the second movie that I felt they had proven that to me.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing too, is like, we can take assumptions on these other Cenobites, and we see that slightly a little bit more in 3, but 3 gets a little perverted from what the intention was. But it works.
It does work. It does work.
But with this one, Channard, the head doctor of this hospital, they really set him up to be this kind of old school doctor, even though this feels more contemporary in the 80s. Yeah. He's this old school doctor where his mental patients are lab rats.
100%. Again, leaning into that old styling of movies where the exotic is India or Egypt. The patients at the institute, this doesn't feel like a real hospital in any way, right? Like, no one's getting help here. People are actively going missing, and he's getting away with it for a long time. We know that for a fact.
There's a lot of stuff around it that I have questions on how this place even operates. But
I do too. But again, it leads to this fantasy, this otherworldness that occasionally you hear Barker talk about when he was writing and thinking about this world. Is that it exists in almost the same non-existing place as like a lot of horror games, where there's really not more around. You don't have to worry about how the world actually works. Just know that this man is evil and this place is evil. Because
it's like how Barker said in the first commentary on Hellraiser, where it's a very American thing to cross the T's and dot the I's, make sure every single thing is explained, whereas all these movies, he always leaves that little bit of openness that I enjoy.
I agree, and I think you can really see that where, granted, he was not a big part of this movie, but when
he was a big part. Behind the scenes big part.
Definitely, because regularly different actors and actresses talk about asking him for advice on what their character's meant to be doing here, or just inspiration in general, like, what is my purpose in this movie? And he would give some poetic, vague answer that really doesn't answer the question, and all of them are like, that's brilliant, it gives me so much inspiration. It's like, I love that you are inspired by this man's horror poetry, but It leads to more questions than answers at the end. But that's the point of Hellraiser, I think.
If it works, it works.
I do think it works.
But,
in this instance.
Yeah. But the one thing I do like with them setting up of Channard is immediately the other doctor, Kyle McRae, sets up as his counterpart 100%, where he's very caring, and we see that he is actually possibly a good doctor. We don't see a lot of him, but we see enough.
He's at least good enough to not be mass murdering patients.
Well, and even then, with how they move this movie forward, there's that quick intrigue of the neighboring patient being obsessed with puzzles, but it's also the way they lit and shot a bunch of these scenes is there's this, especially in this scene, there's this interesting use of shadow where the new girl, Tiffany, is surrounded by shadow, but she's still in light.
True.
Kirsty is half in shadow, half in light, and then McRae is fully in light. Kind of like showing that, hey, they're all in these different stages around this kind of puzzle.
this hell, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I also love that we don't have to wait too long for a good and proper spook that's not flashback spook.
Yeah.
We get nice skin man writing on the wall with blood.
That's a little bit later.
Not too far, though.
Not too far, yeah.
I appreciate that we get a good build, but I don't have to wait till halfway through this movie.
Yeah, we still keep building that there's a lot going on, that, hey, we're building a little bit of suspense.
Absolutely.
Oh, you were right. I do apologize. This is that part, too.
Thank you.
I got mixed up with a little bit later, but...
I mean, they reused the scene a couple shots.
Yeah, but the way the bringing that in is, it's a good way of showing Kirsty is still kind of in between, because she's seeing visions of hell. She's not fully in hell, but she's hell adjacent at this point.
And I also like that while this specific Hellraiser doesn't ever fully go into the idea of oh, maybe this is all in her head, it gives that little tease. There's a lot of play on other themes of horror, this being one of them. So there's this quick little doubt, because you're like, well, she is in a hospital right now. We are in the mental institute. Maybe we are seeing things, because that's what she's getting told. That's what she thinks. Why wouldn't it be true? Yeah. I like that it's just a quick tease, but we know it's real because this is Hellraiser.
Well, also the dad disappears, and then the writing's still left behind. So it's like kind of like, was that real? Oh shit! There's a little bit of evidence.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, that's the other thing too. Is like, we don't linger on it too long before we're introduced to the next patients. Which there's the one line in this with the crazy dude who says, "It's been 105 years and he still doesn't know my name." Another line that cements Chouinard as that this character that doesn't care about his patients. He's not even trying to even learn their name or even really give them any acknowledgement that they're there. They're just an instrument. And like even then, like the way they build up this facility, that the bowels of the institute are interesting because they're these cold machines that almost feels a little bit hell-like in its own regards to that. These people are across the way from these machines, but they're in these solitary padded cells.
It's very much bringing the ideas of long past practices and horror that we've heard about from these institutes that even for the 80s would not have been a thing. Like, this is blending time a little bit, because a lot of these practices have been long debunked, but everyone's slightly familiar with the different horror practices: electrocution, the straitjackets, the isolation, the water tortures, just throw things at the wall and see what sticks sort of concepts. And so even though we, again, lost time, a little bit of lost location, it doesn't really matter that none of this is factual in any way.
No.
Because instead of feeling like just a bad doctor, we very quickly get the confirmation that he is purposely making people worse so that he can use them.
Well, and not just that, but it also shows the extent of where the facility is. It's not some light facility. The guy that we've seen is a guy who's trying to cut bugs off of himself.
And the other thing that brings up an interesting point is this isn't just like some facility that's being lost because it has no funding and like it slipped through the cracks. Everything here is expensive and fairly well maintained, with the exception of a few dark recesses. This place, someone is paying for this.
Yeah.
But they're not looking at it, because if they would, they'd find all the bodies. So many bodies.
That we can assume, because we actually don't see any in the facility itself.
Well, they're somewhere. They're here somewhere.
But it also is a good way to set up, this contrast between him and McCrae, who's checking in with Kirsty, as well as building her need to return to hell because her daddy's there, and he shouldn't be there because, to be fair, he is innocent. And I do feel bad for her dad in the first film to begin with.
I do too. It does bring about some questions that I hadn't considered. My friend, who is a big, fan of the franchise, did bring up the question of, if this is hell, why is the innocent man in hell?
Exactly. It's just a bunch of these little things of well, maybe he is innocent, but we'll get into that, why this is such a big part of the plot later on.
And I love her response, because she answered her own question for me, and she goes, part of the fun of the Hellraiser, though, is maybe he's not there at all. And I went, sure.
Or maybe he does actually belong in hell. Maybe her daddy isn't such a good guy.
His brother was a piece of shit, so, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. We don't know, and this movie will never tell us.
Well, and that's one thing that's interesting about these movies, too, is it's heavily focuses on basically the baddies of this movie, but also how there's so many innocent people who are affected by these dire desires and drive for passion.
True.
It makes me think a little bit of like how in Aleister Crowley's search for his own belief system and pursuing his own personal pleasures, he drove these people who were some people good, some people maybe deserving.
Yeah.
But driving people into their own hell and ruining so many people's lives in his own pursuit of desire and passion.
Speaking of Crowley, he is on the wall in the background if anyone cares to find the fun details.
He is, and then in office later on. So.
Yeah.
But there's also some other bits for Hellraiser 2 that are a little less poetic, of like McCrae hearing Gennard's phone call of like, no, don't move the mattress, just leave it there, I'll come and get it. Like, or no, come through the back door. Like, it's kind of like this blatant, hey, McCrae, maybe you should look into this.
I do appreciate that the direct motives for certain characters is super spelled out, and then the rest of, honestly, these first 4 movies is so visually poetic that there's just open-endedness and interpretation galore, and yet, occasionally, we need a character to do something, and so instead of, like, continuing in with that otherworldliness, which I honestly think would have been too much for a lot of fans of Hellraiser, there's just a blatant, like, and then he overheard this thing and he decided to go be nosy.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is.
It's a great blending of kind of 2 styles of horror. The more direct, that what we generally think of in a horror, where there's a quick, easy plot and well thought through, and it's all laid out, you know, the road to be followed. And then there's the more poetic ones. Usually we don't see those in the US. They're usually from somewhere else brought in. But it's nice to see kind of a blending of those 2 styles.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing, is like this one definitely, while the first one is a little bit more open-ended, this one starts answering some of those questions just a little bit more.
The entire reason this one even was brought about was because while they made money and wanted to continue to make money, they also felt that the first movie had left too many open holes, and they wanted to like talk about those more, especially with Pinhead. Don't know how well they managed to actually like do that, because I feel like the part that they really were like harping on, especially in their reviews, was, we wanted to elaborate, especially the Cenobites, especially Pinhead. They cut most of the background for Pinhead out of the movie, especially for the theatrical release. So, like, I don't know how good the argument there is, but I do like that it continues the world. It's truly a sequel.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, but even then, like, that's the very next part where Kirsty is explaining to them of, like, what happened in the first movie. This is where I have an issue with the opening being...
Because we already did all this.
Yeah.
I agree.
But I get it from a movie-making standpoint of, like, the flashbacks set a more visually interesting style, or visually interesting telling of, like, hey, this is what happened, rather than just her talking about it all. But that again...
I agree. I don't like both of them. However, I feel like this is one of the very few instances where the visual flashback, to me, works better, and partially because by the time, especially the second one came out, the imagery for Hellraiser was almost entirely Pinhead. Not even Cenobites, just Pinhead. Even though he's not really the main villain in the first one, I very strongly, granted, this came out in 88. I did not watch this movie for a very long time after it had been out in the world.
Oh, I was in college when I watched it.
Yeah, I think last few years of high school, my friend who's like super into horror, like, was gifted the first 3 or first 4. I don't remember how many she had, but like we then sat up all night watching these and being spooked.
Yeah.
But we waited so long after this. So our imagery of the first one, even when we watch these movies back to back, is Pinhead. And so having a visual reminder of who is who was so much more helpful, because those characters come back. I need to know faces. And just being told my stepmother, great, I've forgotten what your stepmother looks like.
Yeah.
Like, my father, Frank, cool. I do not know what Frank looks like anymore.
Or, not father, Frank is the...
Oh, my uncle, my terrible uncle, Frank, who now wears my dad's skin. Or wore his skin for a hot second. I don't remember what either of those men look like, just off the top of my head. Having those flashbacks, I think, is a stronger, like, link. I think we could have maybe glossed over a little faster Kirsty's talking.
Or skipped the beginning.
One of the two.
Yeah. But it's also, it not only just serves as a way to get the other characters up to date, it's also a way to hammer in this a MacGuffin that her dad's innocent, and that's why she needs to go back to hell.
She is such a brave and strong person because I love my father very much, but I don't know if Hellraiser is a place I would return in order to save anyone I love, let alone dear dad.
Yeah, no, exactly.
This girl is dedicated.
Oh yeah, well,
but also this would be a terrible sequel if she wasn't. So
yeah, and maybe that's the thing of like the daddy's girl, but it does give that real driver of it makes her desire to go make sense compared to like because she's seeing all this other stuff.
Yeah,
and it's not like okay, no, we have to seal this up, we have to close this off, we never should let this happen again. She's like, we
have to do this again.
But it gives her like it makes her that very in between character if she doesn't. She probably shouldn't go back, but she has the desire to go back of like she has other sites that she has to see because she's driven. She's driven in a different way than all the other people who are driven to get there.
Yes, I agree. And then the other point of her that I think is really the more hammered home point, at least in the first two, I think we get a little bit more creative with what that looks like in the third and fourth one, is there is a interest in the purity motive with characters, especially the female characters. And in the first movie, we're really hammering home that she is a pure. She's pretty, but she's not flaunting it. She's daddy's girl. She doesn't love her stepmom, but we learn that she shouldn't. Her stepmom is a horrible person.
The purity of youth. She fits into that vein of fairy tales where she's the pure virgin character.
Exactly, and this movie tries to then like reiterate that now involving two characters who are supposed to fit that sort of trope. However, she's already seen hell. We need some type of motivation, and this character we have to recognize is growing up. Like, she's in a psych ward, she's seen hell. We are not the innocent child we once were. But clinging to that hope of dad, I think really is like what they were really going for with trying to like bring back that innocence to her character.
And that's where she serves as that counterpart of, she has that partial innocence, but Tiffany and her initially perceived innocence of the world of just being obsessed with puzzles serves as that new Snow White, new fairy tale princess character.
Which, we do get an interesting twist towards the very end with Tiffany, which I appreciate, because otherwise she would have been incredibly bland. Yeah,
but that's what makes her work so well is because she appears so innocent. It's that illusion of innocence that really makes her feel much more of a tragic character later on.
I agree.
And then when we finally move on to like finally getting into gore again outside of flashbacks and resurrecting the stepmother.
Yes, finally.
She serves as this way for Shinar to basically give him the key for what he wants.
Yeah, and I would say that the first, honestly, half of the movie, her character does kind of feel like that's all she's there for, which is a little disappointing, but also we have plenty to do, so it's not the worst outcome possible. It's just very odd, and I do wonder if part of it was partially because this actress was very novice and then did not go on to do very much. She was mostly cast for her kind of ethereal look.
Oh, no, I'm moving on to the stepmother. That's what I'm talking about is she provides Shinar
She sure does.
They basically giving him the answer of what he wants.
I see, yes. The stepmother then does re-enter. Yes.
But that's one thing that I find funny about McCrae's character specifically in this bit is that his involvement is just
enough.
It's this initial curiosity that he's ready to break and enter into his boss's house.
You get a hot second where you think that maybe this movie is going to have him be the main character. And you're like, okay, maybe, I could see it. Maybe he's going to, like, step up, really, like, take on this, like, new role, be
a fatherly character a bit.
You would hope, and alas, not really.
No, he's just kind of this way to keep Kirsty up to date with what's going on.
And also, like, for us to get a really good look at this, honestly, really cool office set.
Oh,
the office looks really cool.
I love this office. It's that old school style office you think of with the carved wood shelving and everything.
Again, leaning back to that previous statement we made of, like, this is painfully UK coded, even if they didn't think it was going to be. This reads Professor of UK Sillyology, where every inch of the office is filled with some nonsense bric-a-brac. There's random skulls in little cases.
Aleister Crowley's in the background.
Fully just a picture framed of Aleister Crowley on the wall.
But that works so well, especially with the iconography that they're going for, of like this search and desire for passion. And who better than Crowley?
Oh, absolutely. And then on top of that, I mean, the actor who plays the crazy, science professor person, Chenard, he looks the part. Like this, he looks like he belongs in this office. They did a great job of finding someone who fits this role so perfectly.
Yeah, Kenneth Cranham.
Yes, who I would argue in his later years does not look like his younger self. I took a hot second to realize it was him. He has more hair and less goatee in this movie than he does in the interviews.
Yeah. But it's also a good way to expand the world just a little bit, and that's the other thing, is like there's these little hints that like there's more around it, but we never fully dive into it. Like we see that there's more boxes, and each looks a little bit differently, showing that, hey, it's not just a singular puzzle box that magically is floating around. Now we know there's at least four. Maybe? I can't...
Right now, we know for sure 4. Because there's the 3 he has in the case, and then we assume that there's the other one floating around still. We don't think he has it.
But also, it's not explained whether that third one is part of his collection. Regardless of that.
Yeah.
Regardless of that little detail, there's
more than one.
And I also do wonder, like, how does he have them to the point where, like, if he has such this passion, is he just not as in tune with his desire as he thinks he is, that's why he can't solve these boxes? Or is he scared?
Okay.
No, he's scared because there's a line later of, who would have thought I hesitated?
Yes. The movie says he's scared. Again, we are...
And to think I hesitated. That's what
yes. But once again, we are heavily UK nonsense coded, because as someone who enjoys a on the verge of cozy British horror book, this character and collecting of the unusual oddities, granted, usually they are Cthulhu-based, or, the mind cannot comprehend.
Ancient Egyptian artifacts that we found in a tomb that hadn't been excavated by human hands in 3,000 years.
Absolutely. It is always someone who, for some reason, daddy left them a shit ton of money, they have an estate somewhere in the countryside, and it's, like, so part of that writing dialogue that I don't know if they realized they wrote this character to be hatefully British. But they truly did, but it works. He looks the part. He doesn't sound British. I don't remember it, but at least I don't think he does. I could be wrong.
I know it's not British, but I'm thinking of like Indiana Jones breaking into his place and like it belongs in a museum.
Okay, but once again, Indiana Jones was written for a time period where they were mocking that style.
Yeah.
So like that is a very good like extrapolation, because the first one we were 100% supposed to be mocking that sort of book or movie, and then from there they kind of just were like, no, that's just who he is. He's that kooky dude. But this movie does a great job of leaning into it more and more, and I do wonder if the idea for multiple cubes came from the fact that they have multiple props and just had them, and they're like, what if there's more than one? Because we already have more than one box. Because despite the fact that many a fan has tried to recreate the puzzle box to like make it do all the moves, as far as I know, according to the people and prop production team, they had to use between 5 to 8-ish boxes, and then a couple on sticks that had mechanical pieces in them to get all of the actions.
Yeah, each one does something a little different.
Granted, with that said, I have not dug down the fanfiction and cosplay hole long enough to see if someone has actually made a fully functioning puzzle cube. Fans are crazy and probably could pull it off. I don't put it past them. Yeah. But the prop department already had like 5 full cubes, and each one just slid differently. And I wonder if that's kind of where the idea came from, is like, well, instead of one, what if we just had more? We've already built them.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, but it also is going back to kind of looking at where we've seen, quote-unquote, the origin of the cube.
True.
Our only connection of where these cubes are coming from are places that are, quote-unquote, exotic. So we got one that's...
Or ancient.
Yeah, I think the original was in... I want to say Morocco or somewhere in Africa.
Somewhere far away.
And then this one we saw in India. So it's like, but when you look at the cubes, there's nothing that signifies that they're of a specific culture. It's that very ancient, like, these things have been around a while, that we don't even know what they're referencing.
Absolutely. And if you look at some of the old sketches that not just Barker, but a couple different people who worked on these movies over the years would do to try and think of either new Cenobites or props, or just plot points in general, they pull from a huge selection, everywhere from Egypt to Native American to South American inspirations. Indian we see quite heavily. So I think that the idea was really to kind of infuse that concept, those sketches, into the office as opposed to the objects themselves. Because even the Cenobites turned out to be much more generic than some of the sketches had them be. But the office has a little bit of everything, so you can kind of like pull those ideas yourself from to get those concepts that I think they were trying to like infuse into the design of the cubes.
Yeah, well, and just the design in general. It makes it, the ambiguousness makes it perfect, where it's not one thing or another. It doesn't.
It's ancient alien.
I'm not.
But it is. But it is.
No, I'm not getting into that. But I do kind of like this bit, too, of, like, McCrae's horror when the patients let in and let him cut up, and Julia reviving and sucking the dude dry. It's just, his little curiosity led him to watch a dude manipulate himself, revive a dead woman with no skin, and sucking this dude bone dry.
And not in a quick sequence either. For the horror fans, the gore fans especially, this is a great sequence. This is a lot happening. We get to see Bugman's point of view, which is fun, really solidifies the, like, psychosis that he's under and why he'd be willing to do this.
Really ramping up the gore and grotesqueness of it all.
We get a really juicy skinned person, which, as we know from anyone who's a fan of Hellraiser, Barker is a huge fan of people with no skin. We get a nice free skinned person right off the bat. She's very gooey. Technically not a she. They did get a guy to play this role.
No, it is okay. So it is her. It's a different woman who's slightly smaller than her, but it's also the guy is the guy who plays Frank.
Yes,
it went into the skin suit. So actually getting them out and whatnot was kind of fun to see.
And I love that he was in one of the interviews was like, "Yeah, I wanted to be like my face on camera, so I appreciate that. I'm not just a skin suit to show to my resume here. Granted, this may not be the best representation for my work, but here I am."
Well, it's good because it shows how far Chouinard is looking to push stuff. Is he's willing to sacrifice his patients to like get what he desires. He's not willing to sacrifice. This is where it's showing him as a coward. Is he's not willing to sacrifice himself or anything around him or anything he cares about. He'll use anything else around him for it, too. And also, with his patients, really, are they that crazy? I mean, yeah, the guy's crazy.
I mean, the guy's full crazy. But he also does not appear to have been helped in any way. They just put him in a straitjacket, which clearly was not helping, because he's already digging away at himself through the straitjacket.
Well, and he also has enough faculties to, like, realize, okay, this woman isn't supposed to, this isn't natural, like,
yeah,
it's not one of his delusions.
No, and you definitely get the vibe that no help was given to Bugman to like try and get rid of the bugs in his head. They were like, "What if we just let this happen, and I can see how far he'll take the delusion?"
Yes.
And the other thing that I love about this scene is this is some top-notch acting. Our doctor character, you can tell just from because he doesn't really have any lines here. He just stands kind of out of the way, looking both interested but also horrified, but it like in a way that you can tell he's trying to mask the horror that he's seeing. And I think it puts that doubt right away into the audience's head of whether or not he can handle or is right for the cube.
Yeah, because he has the desire, he's just hesitating to take the steps necessary that would potentially push him into what needs to be or what's necessary to open those gates.
And I think that is so much more interesting, especially, and granted, I know they didn't originally intend it because this was only number 2 and there's a whole bunch more, but if you've watched more of the Hellraiser universe, it's interesting to come back to 2 and then think to yourself, this man's not actually ready or wanting of the box. Because if he did, he would not have that face. He would not have had that look. He would not have been disgusted by this. He would have already opened the box.
Exactly.
He would have already become a Cenobite, probably.
Yeah, again, he's hesitating.
Yeah.
But I do like that while we build this up, we get a new puzzle box with Tiffany, where it's this reflective puzzle, and it starts this couple little bits we see with mirrors kind of serving as that traditional gateway to the other side.
I do appreciate that in their effort to find both a puzzle that visually looks good, but also looks slightly harder / unusual, they have found a basic puzzle that comes in like a Christmas box, essentially, that's like, it's hard, it's not that hard. As opposed to finding like a truly like impossible puzzle, they always give her like normal ones because their budget was almost no dollars.
Yeah.
As was the first one. Granted, this one has slightly more budget than the first one. The first one, regularly they talked about how they only had like $30 to make a prop.
Yeah.
And we'd get in trouble for spending $35 for said prop.
Well,
they had a little bit more budget, but not a lot, because like the puzzles they show her doing are like basic 500 puzzles of like landscape, arguably some of the easiest puzzles to put together.
In cube form, basically.
And and then they also show her like putting together the cube puzzle, which is a little harder, still not that hard. Like at no point do they like, because as someone who likes puzzles and like follows people who do puzzles like professionally, puzzles, yes, you can do puzzles professionally. I am not qualified. But there's like national championships of puzzles of various forms, not just Jigsaw. Like, you name the puzzle, there's a person who A, collects, and B, does it with passion that you did not know existed. I love that for them. But I now also know how expensive those puzzles are, because I thought to myself, I have someone in my life who loves puzzles very much. I'll get her a very, very hard puzzle for Christmas. Went onto the eBays and said, I love you very much, you will be getting a normal puzzle.
Yeah, I've only gotten her a couple, like, of the more advanced, but, like,
still doable.
Barnes & Noble available puzzles.
Yeah, and so I love that you can clearly tell that A, none of them were truly puzzle people, and B, they had a very small budget, because these are definitely puzzles they found from, like, the thrift shop or their house.
And they've slightly decorated it to fit Hellraiser.
Barely decorated it to fit Hellraiser, and I love that.
Yeah.
Because for someone who's insane and obsessed with puzzles, she's over here doing, like, Barnes & Noble level puzzles.
But she's not insane, though. That's the thing, is, like...
Okay.
She's just mute.
But you have to remember, this movie is filmed in 1988, probably set earlier than that. 70s at very best. The asylum seems to be set in the 40s to 60s range.
Yeah, like when you'd send your kid to these camps or these facilities because they were slightly depressed.
Exactly. So, the fact that we have someone whose only interest in life is puzzles, like probably to the point where she's not eating or sleeping, and she does not speak. Crazy. Absolutely insane.
Or did, because I do have some questions, but this one will make time later.
Probably have answers. This is one of my favorite interests.
Well, maybe we don't. It's maybe how was Tiffany conditioned to be with these puzzles? Like, she's good at them. I mean, it's kind of hinted that she has an interest in them and she's good at them. But what is she being conditioned or? Well, no, I'm answering my own question. She is being conditioned.
She's 100% being conditioned. We know that because he is here and
he's using
not
her.
Treating.
She's a lab rat to him again.
And again, like there's no evidence that he's helping in any way with her mutism or like her compulsion with puzzles. Like he's feeding her puzzles constantly to just make her better at puzzles. However, was she supposed to be in this asylum? Probably not.
No.
Granted, I have not read all of the literature. Maybe there's a little novella somewhere out there that like explains this that I have not read. But as far as I know, though, like, she's story-wise just in this asylum for convenience story's sake, not because, like, she's crazy enough to be in, like, the most insane asylum.
Okay.
So, like, is there a chance that, like, the doctor saw her and was like, I need that patient, transfer her to my unit? Maybe. Probably not. She's just here.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, again, these movies have a lot of things left unanswered.
I would argue half of this movie is left unanswered. Granted, that's, I think, for the better. I think the Cenobites in general would completely dissolve if real questions were asked. But half of this movie makes no sense.
Yeah. And that's the best part.
I would argue it's the best part. It's definitely the most visually interesting part.
Yeah, well, speaking of visually interesting, when we do go back to the stepmother, she is so creepy without her skin.
God. Oh my god. I am so sad that this could not have been the villain for all time. Because she's perfect as a villain.
She makes that very... Well, at the same time, like... Because Kirsty's story ends with this movie. And it's this... She loses that point of the evil stepmother after that point.
No, and like, I'm not sad that this is the end. I'm happy we got a second one at all. But this actress plays such a good villain. Such a great, like, crazy, just... driven person, and it's all just in the eyes, just in the facial expressions, because the rest of the acting is pretty straightforward. Murder this person, be skinless here. Stand around a bit.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, is, like, they make the sexiness of all this grotesque.
Yeah.
And I do like that it's kind of maybe a little jab at beauty isn't just skin deep.
Sure, but I also think it's a very quick way to remind people of the core understanding of the Hellraiser universe, which is that pain and pleasure to the umpteenth degree is crazy. Mm-hmm. And you cannot have one without the other.
No, exactly. I mean, you don't know what pleasure is until you've had pain to balance it out.
And that is the entire premise of the entire franchise, for the most part, with a handful of exceptions. But that premise being quickly and very efficiently shown in such a good horror element way. Like, the outfit looks great, the close-ups, the sensualness of him eventually wrapping her in the bandages. Mm-hmm. All of it really leans into that concept so well and reiterizes it without actually physically saying it again.
Well, and it makes her a powerful female character where it's almost in a way harkening back to Bride of Frankenstein a little bit.
Little bit, but I would argue that she's not that powerful. She's only in the movie for like 10 minutes.
No, she is much more powerful than I think you give her credit for. And
sure.
I'll get into like some of the stuff they say a little later down the line when they're actually in hell. There's a couple things that is like, okay, she's someone who's good, who was attempted to be important to this world of hell.
It is always surprising that she does not become like a permanent figure in some way.
But instead of like Bride of Frankenstein, where she's created and she hates her own existence and it's a rejection of being created to be this bride, she's there, but she's like, okay, I've been summoned, but you already know she has an ulterior motive. She's not a good person or an innocent soul like the bride is.
But the other thing that I love is because we've already encountered this figure, I love her line where later on she talks and says, you thought I could just be the evil stepmother. No, I can be the evil queen, too. Mm-hmm. And it is such a great way of explaining how this character evolves, because we do already know that, like, she probably is not actually interested in this doctor all that much. She is using him 100% to get skin back.
It's building her lust for power that we see later on.
And which is, again, like a fantastic building on this Hellraiser world, where it is, the base core is the pain and pleasure combo, but it's desire in its essence. And desire can look at, like, many ways.
Pure desire.
Yes.
And speaking of desire, the desire of McCrae, despite what he's seen to continue investigating Channard, is a weird thing, because, like... He's like, oh, Kirsty, we gotta stop him. But he's also creepy, too, because he's, like, waiting on her bed while she's in the shower.
Yeah. Again, I think they're trying hard to, like, ramp up Kirsty's innocence here, especially sexually, but without like making her a child again. Yeah. Because we've already passed that point. They talk about how I think in the first movie the actress was 16-ish, maybe 17, but she looked very young for the role, and they thought that fit well. She has aged enough that she no longer looks younger by any means. She's
aged in a year, Chris. Jesus.
No. I say
Kirsty, you aging quickly.
No, I would argue she did not look younger in the first one. I think they were pulling their own leg. I think that they realized that they couldn't draw on her pretending to be young anymore. Not only just, like, from her being... She physically does not look like a child.
She doesn't feel like a high schooler from, like, the first movie.
No, and she has seen enough of hell to, like, make her more adult than she probably would be, even if we are going to lean into this fantasy of her being a teenager, which, hard to believe. At least the 16 that they claim.
Yeah.
But I do think that he as a character, his only purpose is really to tell and motivate her for this, like, brief scene, and then I stop caring about his existence entirely.
Oh, well, and I think part of it is because, like, this scene, while serving as a way to harp on her dad's innocence and how she has to go back to hell.
Sure, but like, I barely cared about her dad in the first movie.
Yeah, but McCrae is just like, yeah, you're not going, we can't go, and it's like, God damn it, son of a bitch, you're in. Like, okay. He's just so back and forth of like, well, we gotta give you clothes. And she's like, alright, I'm coming with you. And he's like, you're not coming with me. Well, why did you give her street clothes to get her out of here?
And now that I've listened to, again, countless hours of people talking about this damn film, I think a lot of our confusion, especially my gripe about him as a character, probably would have been solved if they had not cut what sounds like a good deal of dialogue that he had right here. it sounds like they had multiple bits that, like, cut because he, as in the end, does not care and does not matter, and they needed a runtime of a specific length, and also they needed to, like, keep this movie going. And so I'm not mad that his extra bits got cut. Like, there's a whole continuity scene that a lot of people, especially, like, big critics, pointed out, apparently right from the get-go, of him and his jacket just, like, disappearing and then coming back.
Yeah.
Apparently there's, like, a whole dialogue set right there where he, like, has bits and, like, more information for us. And then they talk about how they had other lines quickly throughout this whole scene that they just cut, because at the end of the day, we don't care about this man, or his motives, or, like, what will happen to him. We only really care about Kirsty, so that we left most of her lines in and, like, got her moving, got her out of her, sad pity party isolation room, and got the story going. But, with that said, I do kind of wonder what the rest of the dialogue was, because they were very convincing and like, well, no, he makes more sense if we had left in all this other stuff.
Yeah,
and, like, I hope.
Yeah, and even in, like, these extended cuts and stuff, like, it's just like, okay, he really ends up just being this character that's there to get Kirsty out.
Yeah, and granted, I think he's needed. I think that role is needed, because I don't see her motivating herself without that outside force. But I would love to have seen, especially these first three, I don't care much about the fourth one, I'm sorry, but these first three had a lot of different bits cut just for either time or budgeting or someone ratings. I would have loved to seen what those were. Some of these special features do come with, like, a few extra scenes that were cut and then put on the DVD, but it sounds like a lot of them were cut and left for gone.
Yeah.
Would have loved to know when that was, because I probably would have liked this man.
Yeah, if you gave him a little bit more than just kind of this...
He's so vanilla.
He's just there to provide Kirsty with information.
He's not even spooked, and he watched a skinless woman eat a man.
Yeah,
He's
pretty much.
He is not panicked enough.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, too, is, like, this movie moves so quickly through stuff, especially where we get Julia feeding on other people, which
the pacing of this movie is really good.
Yeah, but this is also what makes Julia worse than Frank, is that one, she preyed on men in the first movie. One of the men arguably deserved it, but some of the others were just felt like kind of innocent, lonely men. But now she's preying on. Well, she wasn't preying on. She was using them to get Frank back, but she was still.
Well, I would say preying on. She did murder them.
She didn't murder them. Frank did.
I mean, she hit them with hammers, and then left them in her attic.
Yeah,
Frank or no Frank, these men were dead.
Yeah, I'm not saying that she wasn't part. She wasn't part of it. She didn't take the lives initially. She led them to the slaughter. But in this time, she's actively participating in killing these people.
Oh, absolutely. And I do like this move away from her desire in the first one felt very strongly tied to Frank, whereas this one does feel more like she's had a taste of power and she wants it for herself.
Exactly.
And while the movie never blatantly tells you what that power is, you kind of get, like, some ideas in your head. Granted, we never told what those, if we're right or not, but, like, one of my friend's headcanon theories that, like, Cenobites can't die except for other Cenobites' hands. So, like, maybe that's her goal, is to become immortal. So I have another friend who wonders if, like, maybe it is power over people. They reference, like, different aspects of the Cenobites and how, like, if she just could, like, come out of hell, how would that affect you?
Yeah.
And I have a third friend who, this is my group of Hellraiser friends. This is my hardcore horror fans, and they all are really into this series, and I am the lone wolf not in it. And that friend is much more interested in the idea of her just now being a murderous psychopath, and, like, this is, like, a craving she now has.
Yeah, well, she also didn't open a box, so she's...
True, but she's been to hell.
Yeah, but does that allow you to become a Cenobite?
That's unclear, and it's one of those things that, like, again, they don't cross their T's or dot their I's, but again, you get these fun ideas, and granted, all three of these friends, like, we watched these movies together all through high school and college, and now well into our adulthood, and we've never talked about these theories before. All three of them had different fan theories, and I only brought it up because after watching this one and the third one, like, really closely back to back, I had theories. And so I was bringing it up to them, seeing if, like, oh, maybe I'm right, because you guys have read all the material. You guys have seen all of the bonus content from, like, 4 on that I don't really bother with. I only really like the first 4. And even they didn't have a consensus that, like, was very, like, cohesive. And I like that. I like that this is a very vague idea of what power is. It kind of is up for your interpretation.
Yeah, well, with that, it's that back to the desire of Shenard is his desire for knowledge, basically, and understanding of the human brain.
Absolutely.
But it's also a good way to, like, build up this tension of, like, okay, and quickly get her back to her skin without building it up, because we don't need the length of the first movie again of, like, luring all these men back. It's just, okay, here's a whole room of patience to get you back.
Also, I think they did learn their lesson from the first one. Apparently, the fake skin was an awful lot to have to put on every day. They thought it was going to be really easy. It was, in fact, not.
No.
And they had to buy an obscene amount of lube to make it look gooey. Which apparently was a little embarrassing because they were buying it from, like, Yield Kmart, as opposed to, like, Amazon, where you have at least some privacy. It's between you and your warehouse man.
Yeah.
So I do think that part of, like, why we move on very quickly is partially because, like, we didn't want to have to put people in the suit for that long.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, the part of this, too, is, like, with... We don't need it, but when we get to her killing McCrae, it's one of those things where there's good tension, but McCrae is also kind of a little bit stupid of, like...
He's definitely getting played.
Well, not just that, but he's just, like, he's in this person's house, and there's a strange woman in there who's cool with him investigating this house. Like,
that's a good point. Like, he just kind of, I don't know, it almost feels like he feels too smart for people to, like, outdo him, so he doesn't even consider the possibility.
Yeah, and that's where, like, his character is just this vehicle to get Kirsty into the house and, like, out of the mental hospital. It's just like he becomes this nothing character where he could have been something a little bit more, because even then, like, we get more interest in Tiffany than we do McCrae.
And Tiffany has, I think, 4 words, not lines, words spoken in this movie.
And at this point, we've only seen her playing with 2 puzzles.
Yeah, and granted, I like this Tiffany character. I agree with the rest of the cast and crew. I would have loved to see her return for other movies, but I don't think acting was her thing. She never officially said why she didn't return to the series, other than just, like, no thank you. But, like, that's a fine enough reason.
She didn't want to be associated with, that was her big thing of, like, being iconic for that, you know.
True, but, I mean, the actor who played Tiffany didn't do a whole bunch else in acting. I think acting wasn't necessarily for her. Which is too bad, because I think she had a great presence. She did a really good job, and I think she played the ethereal role really well. Like, she feels aloof, but she doesn't feel like she is stupid mute. She doesn't feel like she's being led from place to place with no knowledge of her own.
Well, and her story, like Kirsty's, is done by the end of this movie.
It is, but again, like, at the end of the first movie, we can always keep going with Hellraiser. When people can be brought back from the dead, sky's the limit for what the story can be told.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not sad that this was her only movie, but I do think it was a really good role, because I do also think that her versus Kirsty's characters in general is a good dynamic. Because unlike what we see with, like, the Alien franchise, where we have our one main female protagonist who ends up being the only badass on the planet, it's kind of nice to have a duality, and they're 2 different styles of, like, strong and independent.
In every woman, there are 2 strong and independent women fighting for control.
Kind of, yeah. One wants to stay in bed, and the other wants to conquer the world.
Yeah. But ultimately, I mean, McCrae's death is just more so to serve as a distraction for Julia, so Kirsty can start putting together that Pinhead was once a human at one point. But, like, that's the other thing, too, of, like, he has all this information and these sketches and stuff stored in his desk, but
he sure does.
How does anyone get any of this information of, like, this cube will let you to it? Is it just people who have escaped, like, Frank and Julia? Or, like, is it just, okay, there's a lore based around this, and then it's, like, a tulpa of, like, if you believe in this box well enough, hell will manifest itself.
I like Barker's interpretation much later in his Hellraiser career. This was not, I don't think the interview was done around Hellraiser 2. I think it was much later. But he talks about how, begrudgingly, his Hellraiser franchise has not turned into the story, but more of the mythos. And he's not thrilled with that, because it's not what he had originally envisioned, but now that it has happened, he's not upset. Similar to, like, when Pinhead got called Pinhead. The character was not originally called that.
He was lead Cenobite.
Yeah, it was lead Cenobite, and everyone just kept calling it Pinhead, and eventually he was like, you know what, though, you guys are right. It's not my thing, but you are correct. And so I agree with him here. I think a lot of your questions boil down to the fact that this, especially by the second one, and I would argue by, like, here in the second one, especially moving for the next, up until the fourth one. Past that, God help you. But I do think that instead of creating a story, he's created a mythos that, much like the Roman or Greek one that has like a lot of loopholes and missing stories and nothing makes sense, I think it's kind of ends up being the same way, and I like that it starts pretty quickly because we don't have to break down or mess up any rules that we maybe had previously made.
Yeah, and it allows for a little bit of flexibility. I mean, especially with how we reunite Julia and Kirsty and the evil stepmom to being now an evil queen again, showing her ambitions.
Exactly.
But it also is kind of a shame, too, because, like, while we have that flexibility, it's hard because you build up some stuff and it never fully articulates or manifests into what you want, especially, like, when we get to 3 and 4 where they bring up some interesting ideas, like, it just ends there, and it's like these cool, like, branches that just die out. Kind of like how in Gintama when they talk about spin-offs, like in the...
And, like, nothing comes of the spin-offs.
Yeah, anime trying to catch up to the manga, but it never reaches back to it.
No, 100%. And granted, I like the word specifically mythos for it, because I do think that captures that idea best, where, like, we have multiple stories of, like, Thor or Thanos, but none of them truly are, like, all-encompassing, at least not really. We have some that are more complete than others, as far as characters go. And I think that, especially by I would say by the end of the second Hellraiser movie, we've really set up the idea of a mythos. And you can see the start of that happening here, where we've got multiple cubes. We're about to be introduced to new or variants of Cenobites that some we've seen before, some are a variation of ones we've seen before, and soon we'll see new ones. And I like that we we get told pretty quickly, like, hey, there's not really rules. Think of this movie more as just like an idea than like a fully thought through thing.
Yeah.
And granted, I think that works. It's just normally we don't see that sort of style of movie with such a hard, straightforward dialogue and traditionally set horror franchise. It's usually something that, honestly, usually Russian or German, where it comes out very poetic and usually black and white.
You got a strong core that the tendrils can extend to wherever the mind takes you.
Absolutely.
But even then, like, when Kirsty is knocked out and we get to opening the gate, the mirror also looks hella creepy, as it works as kind of a mirror and a doorway in itself into that room.
I also think we've really, like, narrowed in on our directing, like, style here, where we get really close to the mirror and you back up, you didn't realize it was a mirror. We're starting to really play with imagery, and it looks so cool. And unfortunately, we are going to lose it to 80s really bad CGI, but it looks cool right now.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is, like, we get the repeat of when she's opening this cube, like the beginning when we saw Pinhead, is the doors are starting to close as another door opens.
Yeah, giving this idea that, like, they can be anywhere, you just have to have the right door.
Yeah, and it also, like, with her able to solve this puzzle, because as far as we knew, the puzzle reacted to desire, and it's this weird kind of combination of Tiffany has her own desire, but it's a desire to solve stuff. It's not necessarily the desire to seek the pain and pleasures of hell.
And granted, they never directly say it, but again, I think it leads to this idea that, like, the desire can be anything, and if Tiffany's desire truly is puzzles to that extreme, that she's in this insane asylum, and granted, you could be put in an insane asylum back in the oldie days for just breathing too hard, but, like, it does lend itself, it follows the rules, the only rules we have of the puzzle box, is that you have to have a strong enough desire. It just doesn't say what the desire is. If her desire is to sit around and do puzzles all day, every day with no death, I mean, she's in the right spot.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's the other thing, too, is, like, it sets the Cenobites up where the others are ready to go and tear her apart, whereas Pinhead steps in and shows that there is a bit of code and hierarchy to them, where he's like, no, it isn't hands that call us, it's desire.
Which is a good line, and a great way to bring back our two creepers hiding behind the wall in the one-way mirror. But it does contradict what we've already known in a sort of way of she probably does have a strong enough desire to actually call the box herself. It's just, that's not the focus of this movie, I guess.
It's not a desire for pushing the limits of human carnal knowledge like the others are.
Absolutely, and again, despite the fact that the two rules of this universe regularly contradict each other, desire and then pain and pleasure to the extremes, they sound like they should constantly be complementary, but as we see here, technically on paper, when writing a story, sometimes it contradicts each other and you get a weird loophole in your own writing.
Yeah. Well, I do like it though, because it's like, okay, you can double team this, but it also builds up that why they're so obsessed with Kirsty is that Kirsty does kind of have this underlying desire that we haven't explored and never explored, because it's not necessary of like her, it's her fight, maybe it's her fighting a little bit against her nature and some of her desires that she has yet to fully explore.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a possibility. I also think that it's interesting that this also opens up the potential of more than one person being part of the puzzle box. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the first movie, they made it kind of not clear, but they definitely implied that like one person, one puzzle box situation.
Yeah, you have to have the desire to even be able to open it.
Well, and then with the example of like, oh, well, she'll trade herself for knowledge where Frank is, it kind of implies that like it's one soul per one box situation. Whereas this one, we kind of throw that rule out the window, and they're like, no, there's two idiots over here. Both of you are up for grabs.
Yeah, but I like that too, is like, because now it makes it so that way there's not just one box per person. It's like, okay, anyone who has that desire can find any of the boxes that'll lead them to their own personal hell.
It also kind of opens up the possibility for the Cenobites not being a unequivocally fair like justice system in a way where like they are godlike and don't have their own ways of twisting the rules. This feels like it opens up the reminder that they were once human and thus imperfect and thus can probably bend the rules to be like, we got both of you, even though normally it's just one.
Yeah, well, there are specific rules that they can follow and whatnot. It sets up a hierarchy that we'll see a little bit of, but doesn't really get explored in this movie. Gets a little bit more explored in the next one, but then kind of
don't worry about it.
Because like when we do finally get into hell, it's this building of the world and explaining with the labyrinth to many hells, which inspired by Forbidden Planet, another fantastic weird sci-fi movie.
Absolutely.
But one interesting thing of like whenever we see the labyrinth, the horns in the background is Morse code for the name of God.
Which I love, because originally the music for this movie was really meant to be more heavy metal inspired, and unfortunately it didn't really work out, and so we went back to our tried and true classics.
For the first one. The first one was originally supposed to be another band.
Yes. They were going in this one to also do a more heavy metal inspired soundtrack, thinking that like, we've got it figured out, like wouldn't that be cool, especially for the hell sequences. It didn't work out, and so we went back to Christopher Young as our composer for this one, which I think is the way to go. Granted, I don't think Hellraiser has a super unique soundtrack, but this is an improvement to the like stereotype.
But it makes it feel timeless is what it is.
No, I 100% think it does, because this movie needs all the help it can get to be timeless, because unfortunately, we're about to get some really cheap special effects.
Some of them I like, though.
I love them, but some of them are not good.
Yeah, but I mean, hell, Leviathan's really cool. I mean,
very cool.
There's all this kind of cool stuff that they got going on, because, I mean, Kirsty's even lost in the Hell Labyrinth. And, like, I think it's a little bit because she's innocent, whereas, like, other ones kind of know their direction. They're kind of drawn towards where they're supposed to be.
Yes. I also think that, like, especially as we work our way through this labyrinth and find different places in it, it kind of implies a little bit of circle of hell logic, where, like, you will end up in your own hell. It just happens to be a part of the maze you stop in.
Yes.
And I love that. I think it works really good. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Labyrinth, like, you know. But I guess the idea is similar, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it also builds the stakes, too, because when she does run into the Cenobites, they shape-shift the puzzle, changing the game a little bit more. And
definitely feel less fair.
Well, and also they're like, what did you expect that puzzle to do? You can't use the same trick as the first movie. You're already in hell. There's nowhere to send us back to. This is home.
And I do appreciate that this version of Hell is more interesting than I think it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that there is an interest by the cast and writing and directing to kind of squish as much interesting horror visualization in as possible, but giving us at least some continuity to why we keep running into different things to encounter, at least kind of helps give some logic to Hell.
Yeah, it's their way of, hey, let's play in a very creepy, sadomasochistic way of, like, we're gonna taunt you, and then when the time's right is when we'll have our fun.
And it feels more creative than just void or recreation of a place you already know, like maybe the set of the first movie, which would have been boring.
Yeah.
You know?
Very much so. Or being stuck in a hospital the entire movie.
Yeah, even just being stuck in her own white box in the hospital would have been, I mean, it would have logically made sense. That probably is her own version of Hell, minus her own old home. But, like, that would have been really dull.
Yeah, well, and there's also hinting of new roles of, like, with Julia, or Julie, where I know they wanted her to be the more iconic figure in it.
They tried so hard.
And you can see where they're going with it, because there was a line where she says, "Come, I have such sights to show you," to Channard. It's like, okay, she's taking Hellraiser's lines now, of, like, really setting her up to be the next one.
I appreciate that she tried so hard, because I do think that, especially these first two, which, you know, that's the one that she's in, but I wish that there had been more effort from the, not directing and writing, because they put all their effort into her, but from the promotional material team, and also the teams putting together merchandise, because by the second one we had quite a bit of merchandise, and it was only going to ramp up from here. And unfortunately, while she's cool, Pinhead made a better poster.
Yeah, he looks cool, because right now she's generic. She doesn't have she doesn't have that S&M look or BDSM look that the rest of the Cenobites have.
No, and even skinless, she's not that recognizable, because unfortunately, most of the cast and crew who worked on this did other stuff and did more skinless people. They all seemed really into that, which, you know, you do you. But that doesn't make her stand out as a specific, like, horror villain in the way that, like, Freddy Krueger or Jason does. Yeah,
she doesn't have that outside. When she doesn't have skin is when she's more iconic than what she is now. But
yeah,
that's the thing too, is like it works because of what her role is becoming. She, in this way that she brings Channard to, like, reveal the truth and, like, give us the flashbacks of Tiffany that are very tragic. Of, like, Tiffany's maybe actually was a normal girl, but Channard got his hands on her, killed her mom. Yeah, and who knows did what to her brain.
Exactly.
But Julia, the reason she works a little bit differently than Frank is she's kind of like Gandalf a little bit, where she's sent back to the Earth because she has a charge to bring more souls to Hell, to bring the people who are tempted as, like, their guidance. And it also explains why the Cenobites don't go for her, of, like, when they are opening the gates of, like, they know that someone around there has desire. It's just not like, oh, one of them has escaped. She was allowed out by Leviathan.
Absolutely. And from an outside story point of view, while I do think the actress did a fantastic job, everyone on the cast and crew kind of, like, shook hands and agreed that they were happy that in the end, Doug, playing Pinhead, ended up being the, like, main face of the franchise, because Doug, like, fully loved and lived this for as long as he possibly could. Whereas she admits that, like, even though she felt that she was the better villain in these first two films, and that she really tried her best, and, like, she takes all this very graciously. She does a great interview. She admits that she can't watch these movies. They're too gory for her. And that she watched as much as she could of the first one, but she watched it mostly through covered hands, and the second one she had to leave, I think, halfway through and go stand in the lobby waiting for the movie to be done.
Well, because they ramp up the goriness too.
They really do.
When Channard, like, I mean, we see that with Pinhead, of him getting impaled and everything. And then Channard, when he's hit by the black light and then starts getting turned into a Cenobite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was Ashley, who plays Kirsty, talks about how on set, like, it looks really gory on film, but even on set it was getting really gross, that she had a hard time filming some of these. Like, she had multiple times where she had to take a break. The actress who played Tiffany regularly had to take a break to go take a smoke break because this was like a lot for her.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, we don't have any interviews directly from her. These are all like cast and crew remembering her, but apparently like these sets were a lot, especially once we get towards the end of the movie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, exactly. And like that's the other thing too, is like with the grotesqueness is it changes a little bit too, where Julie isn't even lustful in this one because like she doesn't have Frank to counter her to that. She has that one kissing scene, and it's really about her quest for power. And even like when they're trying to escape hell, I mean, once it's revealed that, or when Kirsty is trying to go to the door, which by the way I do like that Tiffany serves as like kind of like this guide of like, okay, maybe we shouldn't be here. The counterpoint of her trying to get out, where Tiffany is just going deeper and deeper into this.
Yeah.
When she sees the door for the house in the first movie. It's almost a morgue of lust.
Yeah.
And so like there's those, it's grotesque in different ways than the first one. It's not just the goriness, it's the bleeding through the sheets and like the lustful pleasure and still bleeding.
I think this movie does a great job of like ramping up that pain and pleasure duo that the first one did bring about, but I think they didn't quite hit home the way they thought they were going to with the first one. They talk about being surprised a little bit by U.S. rating system and how they thought they were going to hit the right target audience in the U.S. with the first Hellraiser, and then were kind of shocked that they were getting a bit younger than they thought they were supposed to. And I think, I don't think fully intentionally, but I think with some of that knowledge and lesson learned in their mind, they were able to take this and be like, okay, well, now we know that if we want to get the concepts across, we need to go a little bit farther. It can't just be between two characters, because then it turns into this romance story, which a lot of people love about the first one, but that wasn't the point.
Yeah, it's like the power creep in anime and stuff, or in regard to like horror films, where you have to constantly be outdoing the last one, making it just as shocking, if not more shocking. Or no, you're always wanting to try and make it more shocking. So you always keep pushing it to be grosser, gorier, and more interesting.
And I also think that, unlike some other horror franchises that came about with directors, writers, and casts who are already fairly, like, ready to go as far as, like, horror parts go, especially gore horror, I feel like this group really learned most of their tricks and trades from the first one, and then had to apply them in the second one. And I think the parts that they did in the first one come out the best in this one. Like, we see the blood comes out better, the interaction between skinless and sheets and clothing is better, the Cenobite horror and body horror with their design is better, and then where we know they don't do as well is, like, the coming up CGI. And part of that's because they hadn't done it before.
Yeah, I mean, they said the black light couldn't be done.
And yet, here we are.
That it works.
It does work. It looks a little corny now, but it does work. But, again, once we get to the third one, we see that those lessons were learned again. Granted, the third one has a lot of complaints.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot of complaints. There's a lot of other new problems, but I do think they regularly learn from each one of these movies as they work on them.
Well, and where stuff doesn't work specifically is in this part 2, where it's revealed that it's Frank, which honestly,
a little confusing, but he's back.
But I like that as a good twist, all because Larry Cotton, the guy who played the original dad, said no.
That's true. So yeah, he was done. He tapped out.
So this whole desire to go to hell means nothing, because now we have no clue where her dad's at.
I also kind of appreciate, because from someone who watches these like fully immersed, like I'm not putting together pieces. I'm not trying to solve the puzzle of the world of Hellraiser when I'm watching these. I forgot that Dad was the reason behind all this until Frank shows up, and I'm like, oh yeah, you!
Yeah.
I forgot about you!
You're the whole reason all this is happening to them.
And you do feel a little, granted, I know the whole reason he's here is because of scheduling and actors not wanting to come back, which, you do what you gotta do. But I do feel a little bit justified in seeing this villain return, and then leaving him in hell, essentially. Like, it feels right to have a little nod back to, like, of course Frank's down here. Where else would Frank be?
Yeah.
He's not in the pearly gates.
No, exactly. They brought him back in the first movie. But there's also, I have a lot of questions about what's coming up, too, because
I probably don't have answers.
I love that he still has this desire to basically fuck his niece.
Yes. Yeah, Frank. Okay, but I do think the first one,
Let me clarify real quick.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea that he wants to fuck
No,
his
I
niece.
agree. I think he is gross, but I think that's the point.
Yeah, I like that while he has this, like, weird desire, he's interrupted by Julia, Julia holding Tiffany hostage. But
yes, well, Julia still.
Julia's power just to show up and prevent him from doing this. It really shows, like, how she's leagues above in a different regard.
I agree. I wish she had a bigger role in hell than what the movie gives her.
That's the thing.
But it's implied she has one.
Because that's the thing, is she rips his heart out, whereas, like, but that's the other thing, is, like, Frank really dead at this point? Or
he's
like,
in hell. He's not dead. You can't die in hell. That's the whole point of hell.
I don't know.
That's the whole point of hell.
We don't know, though.
We don't 100% confirm no. However, I do think that knowing some of the older previous works, especially now this frickin' play that has been hammered home, but is at its core the bones of Hellraiser's world, that then just get polished and refurbished and put back in different locations to make a new skeleton. I can't say for certain if people die in Hellraiser hell or not, but I can say that I think everyone who worked on this movie assumed that you understood that Frank was supposed to be the lust portion and Julia was supposed to be the power portion of the dynamic duo in the first one, and unfortunately I did not catch that until the second one, and it was explained to me by cast and crew.
Yeah.
Because there's so much visually happening, and granted, that is where the critics were heavily divided. Not just in this one, but in most of the Hellraiser franchise, up until I think the fourth one. The first one got good reviews, but not in the way that the writers and directors were hoping. This one got very mixed reviews. I think it sits around the 50-60% mark on most people's likability rating list.
Yeah.
But from a critic's standpoint, I understand fans do not give a shit.
Yeah.
But I think that is where the understanding of this movie pulls apart into two different places, where one group, the critics who really liked it and saw the poetry behind all of this, like, hell imagery, and then the other group that just saw kind of mindless gore without the poetic part behind it.
Yeah, I can see that. But, like, that's the other thing, too, is, like, you bring up that there is so much going on. I think maybe that's part of what it is we have so much happening when we're in hell. It's a bunch of new information, and it adds to, like, the confusion with being lost, because we also, while this is happening, we get a cut to kind of an unboxing of the new Cenobite, which I think is cool. It's slimier. Again, we have to build up the grossness. We have this tentacle, and while mute, I mean, Tiffany is smart too, of, like, needing to get out of there, but also needing the puzzle.
True. Yeah, like, she doesn't feel like a useless, like, thing to drag around. She now feels like more of a person. She's independent.
And brings up more questions about the skin suit, because she grabs her arm and Julia's yanked out like shucking a bug or something, or shucking a lobster.
Yeah, or corn maybe instead of bugs.
Well, I was thinking like ripping out the spine.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's where the substance pulled from, because that kind of does the same thing.
Maybe. I was getting very much like just degloving.
Yeah. Yeah, she degloves.
She does
a full body degloving of
a bodysuit.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, a morph suit degloving, if you will. Which did bring into my question how firmly attached all of these people are, because the first movie, they seem like very solid. This one, this is not the only instance of degloving we are going to get. There's a whole nother scene coming up where we just pull off more skin.
Yeah, because she puts the skin suit on.
Yeah. Which begs to question, like, is there a fitting process to the skin? Is there a sewing process? Do we need super glue? Why is the skin so loose?
Is it like a flesher from Dungeon Crawler Carl?
Is it? Or does it take time for the skin and muscle to, like, refuse together? Sort of. But she's been down here a while, the skin, for, I would think, a while. I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know how time works in hell.
Maybe it's a skin tight suit.
Maybe. No, I do like that, once again, we are given more questions and no answers whatsoever, because then in the third one, these degloving questions are not answered in any way.
No.
And the how a Cenobite thing is made, which is cool, and I liked, and is implied that, like, this is kind of how all of them are birthed, but then you watch the first one again and you're reminded that there's, like, extra Cenobites that, like, aren't really Cenobites. Because there's, like, the hallway one, and then the dragon thing.
Well, and are Julia and Frank Cenobites? They're just kind of the boring, vanilla ones?
Yeah, is there boring Cenobites, or is, like, hell, like, if we had kept going through the labyrinths of hell, is, like, everyone in hell down here, and Julia just happens to be more hell-focused than others, more career-driven, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, no concept, no idea. I've asked around, and, like, I've gotten a few different answers, because, again, Hellraiser doesn't really explain it. It kind of lets you put it together. And now, especially having listened to Barker talk about his creation a bunch, that kind of makes sense. Everyone who's ever talked about him praise him for his genius, but also regularly talk about how he's constantly working on, like, 3 things simultaneously. And even listening to him talk about his own creation, especially once we get towards the ends of his interviews, which kind of usually line up with the end of the movie, he regularly just kind of goes off on a new tangent, or, like, rehashes something but in a completely new way that we've already talked about 10 times in his interview. And it kind of makes sense, because that's kind of what's happened here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much that's left open that we could talk on it for hours.
Oh, for sure.
And technically, by the end of this, we probably will have.
I guarantee it.
But I also like that when they do get out of hell, they're just trying to casually leave the hospital.
They do just casually leave the hospital.
No, they don't, because they just... Well, I'll get to that in just...
Okay.
I'll get into that, because, like, this is the part where they go through the room and there's all the other people trying to solve boxes, which I don't get why they're trying to open it when he's already able to come through and, like, grab them and stuff and torture them.
It is a bit implied that, like, maybe everyone got a box and just our smarty puzzle pants person was the last one to be given a go at the box.
Well, they've all got different ones, so it's like...
It would be a different... But, like, it's kind of sort of implied that, like, a different version of hell is open for each box, and, like, maybe different Cenobites, because, like, we see these Cenobites. We know there's others.
Or is it kind of like a egress kind of issue of, like, you only have so much room for space that people can pour out of. You gotta open up more boxes so other Cenobites can pour out of.
Maybe. I don't know. It's not really ever explained. There's some, like, good guesses one can make based off of, like, reference material and sketches, but those aren't canon in any way. Okay. So, like, unexplained. There's just now dudes with puzzle boxes. Yeah. And there's a lot more than we thought originally.
A lot more. But I do like this, because this is where it really gets chaotic with, like, the effects that they put in between too. Because, like,
these effects are this is, again, 1988. These effects are bad for 1988.
But that's the thing, it's like they're stop motion. And that's why I like them, is because I do enjoy stop motion, by the way.
I do too.
Done by Rory Fellows, which we will bring up in one of our October episodes.
Absolutely. No, I like it. I just think that you can really tell how low the budget was on these, and I think especially the first one and most of this one, they hide the low budget really well.
This one they do in a different way too, because Chenard's Cenobite's form, he was supposed to be connected to Leviathan, like, through the tentacle.
But they didn't want to do that, because that's money.
They couldn't afford it,
no.
One. But I do like that it kind of becomes this... He becomes almost a puppet in, like...
He feels marionette-y.
Yeah. But it makes him set apart from Pinhead, because now he is kind of special. He's physically connected to Leviathan, where Pinhead is just the foot soldier.
It really re-solidifies the original concept of the Cenobites, of all of them being a different aspect of pain and pleasure, and then also ability, which we didn't really get into until this film, but, like, it was originally thought about, especially with the early sketches on, like, design and costuming and, like, what they were supposed to do. I like that we kind of lean in, especially now that we have, like, some flamethrowers, cool stuff. It's implied that there's maybe some other abilities.
There's surgical tools, and it's just showing more so that he's able to actually experiment on his patients like he had wanted to.
Yeah, it leans into also that there's maybe some personal identification with each Cenobite and why they look the way they do. Granted, we never truly know that. It's just from his character design that we're extrapolating that. But
yeah, well, and we get some a little bit here and there with, like, Chatter being heavily modified, the female Cenobite with her thrussy.
Yeah, I love that one of the think it was one of the costume designers was briefly talking about her look and didn't have a polite way to explain what was happening on the throat.
Yeah, they didn't have the "ussy" suffix
They
that we're
didn't.
thrown onto everything now.
No, they were lacking the technology we do here in the future. But I appreciate that, like, even like none of the iconography that even I wasn't necessarily looking at or seeing with the design. Like, I saw a lot, but I didn't see all of it. I like that none of it was random. None of it was only because we couldn't afford a prop or couldn't afford a CGI effect. Even if that was the case, they rethought it through so that way everything felt fairly rounded. And there was a lot of design work that I honestly can't see because this movie is really dark.
It's not that dark.
Not all of it's dark, but certain Cenobites just never show up during, like, the bright day. Pinhead does. We see him pretty well. We see our Doctor character pretty well. And we see our female Cenobite well, because I think this is her last appearance.
It's a lot of their last appearances.
Yeah, I think it is all the Cenobites' last appearances, because if I remember right, the only one who returns is Pinhead. I think everyone else is played by someone different, even if the costume is similar.
Yeah. There's variations, and that's what I like about the later ones, is, like, there's almost these archetypes of different foot soldiers, of, like, the females always follow something a little along the same lines. I mean, hell, technically we see one in the next one that has kind of a thrusty, but she's smoking with it.
We do, and there's always one character who feels more like the dog of the family, like, just mindless. This movie, it's the chatterer.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I really like that we also learn from the costuming mistakes we made. The first film, granted, everyone pointed out immediately to me, he has no eyes in the first film. He has eyes in this film. It's because the actor could not see, and that was a problem on set.
Oh, yeah.
And so they added eyes.
But I also like where we build the Cenobites for this, too, of where Kirsty is, like, getting ready to run away, and they're like, what are you gonna do? The box is unsolvable now.
And she's like, well, I've got the brilliant person right here, so no worries.
You have the desire to solve us, but she delays them with just asking them for more information. Like, the Cenobites are some mythical creature of, like, you can, or, like...
It's like a sphinx. You can keep asking questions without answering the riddle.
Exactly.
No, but again, like, that was Barker's, like, begrudging explanation, was that he'd accidentally created a mythos, and so it does all line up. I think at the time, especially in this one, granted, not technically a writer, but heavily involved, technically I think there was probably somewhere in his head an answer to your questions. It's just he spoke in riddles and poems, and so, like, none of them made a ton of sense.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, this is kind of a funny little moment of, like, this is what stops them. He has all these powers, and it's questioning them, and then telling them that, hey, by the way, you all were human at one point, and not human, honestly, not that long ago, dude.
Yeah, no, I mean, World War II was Pinhead, supposedly.
Yeah.
I think. So, like, yeah, not that long ago. I mean, this is the 80s-ish, maybe 70s, maybe 60s, hard to tell.
Yeah, it's been 40 years since you were a human, Pinhead.
Yeah, you can do this. I also think that something that Randall, who, not the original director of the first one, but was a huge fan, and thus when he directed the second one, wanted to keep a lot of the styling. I do think it's very interesting that one of the things he does talk about is that he added a little extra humor to try and, like, break up certain spots that he felt like the original one's humor had just either not landed well or had, like, been cut out, because it was a lot of just one really brief line or spoken sentence. He added a little bit more, which then ended up being a lot of critics' like big complaint because they didn't think it was funny enough.
Yeah,
and I thought this one had like a plenty of like good sprinkles.
Well, the funniest part for me with this is coming up when we get it's a little bit after, like, the furthering the threat of Channard of being this extension, and that the Cenobites, once they've learned about them being human, they kind of deconstruct to their human form. It's a little funny to me because they all look so out of place in this S&M gear.
They sure do.
And they're just like these regular looking ass normal day people. They don't even have there's not even like a hint that, okay, they were into body modification to begin with. It's just like,
which would have been like a big thing for like the time period that this is set. Piercings were not like a mainstream activity. That would have been pretty shocking.
Yeah.
But no, like, these are just super normal dudes, and I appreciate that, like, I think most of them are their actual actors just de-makeup-fied.
Yes.
Which is hilarious because the, like, fat one is just a really skinny dude, and then he, like, reverts and his outfit does not fit anymore.
Yeah.
And there's like, bits of humor like that where, like, the only thing that can kill the Cenobites is A, other Cenobites, and B, humanity.
Yeah. Well, I do like how it is also a little poetic too. Of like, it's terrifying because they are everyday people. Everyday people can become these monsters or hide these lurking desires.
I do think that was part of the original like concept. Is, you know, Barker talks briefly about how like you can't spot a psychopath. They look like everyone else. Granted, I don't think that was like the direct interpretation that he was going for. I think he was trying to imply that like just anyone could have been a Cenobite with enough desire behind their intentions. However, I do find it hilarious that in the commentary, more than one person who worked on this, including directors and writers, come to Pinhead's defense on whether or not he could beat this guy in a fight.
Oh yeah, well that's
and
the
like
thing.
that's the whole point, is that he's not like that. It's fine that he can be defeated.
Yeah, well when
because he comes back.
Yeah, he's turned back to just being a boring person basically. But that's the thing is like I know they had a bigger elaborate fight plan, but had to cut it because of budgets.
Sure.
But again, like you brought up, it's a good ending for it. Like
it is,
or it's not a good ending. It's a great way to like show that okay, humanizing them kills them basically, or weakens them.
But it also shows that just because you're human doesn't mean you can't stand up to them. Because the whole reason Pinhead like dies the way he does is he's like, well, I can stay here in hell and like hold him off for you a little bit.
Yeah, well, and in all of this too, it's Kirsty is still maybe enamored is the right word. Is she still focusing on them while Tiffany is the only one with a clear head going to try and close hell?
Yeah, good job, Tiffany.
Yeah, which I mean, really poor for her. I mean, when she's getting attacked by Channard, and I mean, I do love when he pops up. It's this kind of like great moment, and like when you thought it's over, but the villain just pops up at the last minute, and even when he says the line, "You have your whole lives behind you now," it's like
it's a good line. Fuck. It's a good line.
Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, man, I do feel bad for Tiffany, because Tiffany's probably not had a good life up until, or at least for how long she's been in Channard's care.
Well, the flashbacks imply that she's had a pretty shitty life, and then she went to, mine prison, and now she's in hell.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Tiffany's life has not been great.
No, but also, like, Channard's falling with, like, ripping the top of his head off, where he's been so obsessed with brains is pathetic. Which
it looks cool, though.
The amount of force that had to have been taken, because ever since we've had that tentacle attached to him, he's been carried around by his head this whole time.
Yeah, it is not anatomically correct the way he rips, but it's a Cenobite, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I also, there's that confusion with, like, Kirsty wearing Julia's skin, like,
it is, but it's a kind of a fun playback on the original and being confused with Frank and Dad and who's who. I like that we kind of like play back into the questions that we just had with how solid is the skin. Mm-hmm. We don't get an answer, but we do at least get to play with the idea a little more.
Yeah, we know that de-skinned people from hell, technically their skin's wearable again.
Great, I love that.
Ed Kemper, or no, not Ed Kemper, Ed Gein would have really liked this.
Yeah, I appreciate that we flop really hard between how loose the skin is too. Because on the face, we go with normal, just face swapping with the actress, but the arms are like wearing saggy, baggy, kind of sweater looking.
Buffalo Bill style.
Yeah, it's something.
But that's the other thing too, is like, what they do eventually get out with Leviathan blasting away and just kind of deforming into a new shape, showing evolution of, like, in a weird way, they're kind of furthering hell getting what it wants.
It's not super implied whether or not they've put hell back a step or if they've moved hell forward a step.
Yeah.
You don't ever really find out.
We do, actually, because, like, that's the other thing, too, is, like, it's kind of funny because they just walk away from all of this.
They do, and good for them.
Well,
I hope they never have to think about this again.
That's the thing, is, like, are they really cured, or are they just leaving because the 2 doctors that we even know of working at this place are dead? Doesn't
matter. This is the 80s, there's no discharge paperwork.
Yeah. But it also just brings up more questions because, like, the logistics of what happens next with them, the movers in the house.
Okay. Normally, I hate a horror, especially horror movie scene that just is there to set up a sequel. However, with this specific instance, I do actually find it very interesting. I think it fits in the realm really well.
Okay, I do find this ending interesting, but my thing is, like, they packed up everything around this bed and just left this wet, bloody bed instead of, like, getting rid of that right away.
Okay, so, again, this is the 80s question mark. So, I don't know how good crime scene cleanup was in the 80s. I know we now have much better, like, you call a number, they take care of a lot of it, and then you can come back in. So I don't know how reliable that information would have been. However, as a moving person, surely you've seen some crazy-ass shit.
But you would have working around all this, but who also packed it up? Did the moving guys actually pack it up, or did they have someone else do it? Like,
I don't know.
It's just such a dumb thing to have this bed there and everyone else moving around. Like, everything else is gone.
It's implied that he is not, like, a lone person. Like, he clearly is somewhat well-respected, and he makes lots of money, and he's not the only one running this hospital either. He might be the head doctor, but they definitely would have had nurses, receptionists, janitorial staff.
Someone knows he's gone missing.
Yeah, so someone lightly cares that he's dead and at least wants all his stuff.
Yeah, but it also makes an interesting point of now that this bed is kind of this gateway. And granted, I know at one point they talked about having the bed be the thing that moves around.
Which would have been funny.
It would have been funny, but it's such a dumb idea. But when the pillar comes out, it's like, okay, well, that gate's open. You don't need the boxes anymore. They're not necessary to the plot of the movie. But I do like that the pillar's got every single person on it. It's got the two skeletons fucking like Frank and Julia. Like,
it leans into all of the small iconography from the first movie that maybe wasn't in this one, like the weird baby thing stuck on the side. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I really like, that I know some fans were not a fan of, is I like that this pillar is not the same as in the third movie, even though it's meant to be. Yeah. I like that they, again, refined and polished it, because they kind of had a last minute, like, what if this pillar?
Yeah, and it's bad, it feels like bad special effects a little bit.
Yeah, and honestly, like, yes, if you're, like, really trying to visually dissect this movie, I can see how maybe that'd be frustrating. I truly did not care and or notice that hard that it was different. Like, did I say, oh, it looks a lot better in the third movie than it did in the second one? Sure, but, like, I did not give a crap. I just liked that we weren't on the mattress anymore. Because the mattress was kind of gross.
We were kind of done with them screwing, basically.
Yeah, and also, it kind of...
There's more.
There's more. Because this is the Hellraiser series. But I also appreciate that, much like the first one moved from the, like, heartbeat under the floorboards Edgar Allan Poe ideology to the mattress, and then this one moves from mattress to pillar. I like that it evolves and keeps evolving. So that way it doesn't feel like the first one was kind of like we fucked up, it's the mattress.
Yeah, it makes me think of like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure where, we have the mask in the first one.
Exactly.
And then now we have the stone or the pillar men.
Yeah, like it feels like a nice evolution, and it also feels like a nice way to keep exploring this world in an interesting way.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing, is like, I do wish Julia did come back for her next, or to be the continuation of the franchise. It
would have been nice, but not necessary.
Yeah, it works so well because it does bring up more questions. It's one of those ones where, and I think the reason this ending works so well compared to like what you're talking about where they set up other sequels, is because it's not just, the creature's still alive, or we get a jump scare of it coming out of a tunnel at the end.
Absolutely.
It's something, it's
another puzzle.
Yeah, it's another puzzle, but it's the evolution of something that's changing. That's like, okay, well, hell is now into our world through some manifestation other than these cubes.
Absolutely. And it feels really refreshing. I like it.
Yeah. Chris, at the end of it, what do you give a rating for Hellraiser? Or Hellbound Hellraiser?
Technically just the second one. I'm going to give it good weird.
Okay.
I don't think there's enough bad in here to give it a bad rating. There's some bad CGI, but I think, honestly, bad budgeting is not really the end of the world, and it's not that bad, and it's barely in the movie. It is weird. It's Hellraiser. But it's also pretty good. I know some people rat on this one. They don't love it. I think it's really good. I think it's a nice sequel. I love that it's a proper continuation. The story continues. I love that we have so many returning cast members and characters. I like this. It's a good weird.
Yeah, I gotta give it good weird as well. Like you said, there are bad parts to this, but I don't think that they necessarily detract. Other than this plot was abandoned because of direct or casting issues.
Sure,
but they redirect it in a creative way that makes it interesting to watch, and like we said, a good continuation of the first one where it takes that basic idea. It honestly might be a little bit better than the first one, to be honest.
Definitely different. I like that we're expanding on the actual world and less focused on this, what a lot of fans call just the romance of the first one.
Yeah, it's like Alien versus Aliens. Like, which one's better? You're watching them for very different things.
I completely agree.
So then, would you recommend this?
For the horror fan, for the gore horror fan, yes, this movie's fantastic. The gore is great. The practical effects are where this movie shine. Don't look directly at the CGI, it's fine. For a normal horror fan, if you are not, like, really into goopy gore, this is not for you. I'm sorry, it's really not. I know it's a classic, I know a lot of people have a lot of fondness for it. This is a very goopy, gory movie. There's a lot of people with no skin. It is not by any means the most gory movie I have ever watched, but because of that, it is also not the cheesy gory that I think some people feel they can get away with. This one toes that line really nicely.
Yeah, it still keeps the poetic of the first one that you all love. It just expands upon it.
Absolutely.
And I think I'm in the same boat. I do recommend for horror fans. I mean, obviously, someone like my mother who...
Yeah, if you're not a horror fan, this isn't for you.
Yeah, no, but it's definitely one that cemented its place in pop culture, and I think it deserves a rewatching if you haven't seen it in a while.
Absolutely, and if you can, watch the first one and the second one back to back is honestly the way to go. They tie together really well.
And get the Arrow collection if you really, really want to, because the box art's cool.
I was going to say, I have a few friends whose Christmas presents is probably going to be this DVD set.
Good. But, yep, that's Hellraiser 2.
Absolutely.
And look forward to more sights to see or hear, as you pointed out.
Absolutely.
As we are staying in hell with a guest episode next week before moving on to some rather super people, even though our guest is a super person as well.
How exciting.
Yeah, but anyway, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the Good, the Bad, and the Weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.